Riders out there, get your paint and pens. It's the Graph Origines and we're back again with a brand new song to keep your heart strong, to play while you're graphing with your Walkmans on. Yes.
What got us inspired into the hip hop movement was just seeing it on the television, really, for the first time. Yeah, just seeing the music generally, the hip hop music, was the real first thing that we came across, or I came across rather, and was inspired by that. People doing murals on the side of trains, you know, tagging on murals or whatever it was called. It was great, you know, to see it on the television, so new back then, so fabulous. Because we had the video back then, we could get videos and so on, and just try and study the dance more than the art movement. So we were into the dance, really. The spraying came later. You know, the artwork side of it came much later. But for me, it was the dance. I was always into the dance and the break dancing. And then a book came along that changed everything, really, which was Subway Art. And we went into town together to get this book. And of course, there's your inspiration there. In this book, all these different styles, mainly from the Bronx in America and so on. A few pieces from France. So we thought, well, come on, let's have a go. You know, how are we going to get cans was the main thing. Well, my friends, really, local friends from where we lived. Yeah, which was Vidler, Martin, and a few others joined us. Yeah, it was great. So we called ourselves the Clash of Style, and then developed a style that we would draw together and mix up ideas, all again with this kind of theme. It was great. And then eventually we thought, well, we've done these drawings, we've got all the drawings, now we've got to find a wall, we've got to spray a wall. So it did come a bit later. And the fun of doing that was just, you can imagine, you know, kids really having a great time with these spray cans. But we managed to source a spray market, which was in Newport. So we'd save up our dinner money, literally save up the dinner money through the week, go hungry, and on a Saturday we jump on a bus, go all the way to Newport, buy these discontinued cans. Yeah. So from the market, from literally an open air market, go back with a rucksack full of cans, with his designs in hand, and then get out in the night, really, which was the real buzz of it all. Because it was quiet, dark, you had no means of lighting, but you follow the design, you just go through the design. So you'd have the three of us there, spraying these designs, and a lookout maybe if you haven't fallen asleep, you know. Yeah, they were crazy days, but great fun. Just cosmic, Roxanne, you know, all the kind of cliche words really, atomic, you know, all that kind of era, 80s era. Probably a few other names, you know, but generally, again, in the hip-hop theme, this new hip-hop theme, which is so amazing. But we weren't using like designer cans, we were using aerosol cans from automotive industry, you know, Halfords cans, discontinued. And just having a go, just really having a go at it, and seeing how it took us from there, really. But development was slow, of course, so the more we did it, the better we got. The most memorable one was Wild for me, which was on a train track, basically. It was, I think it was a signal box, or it was an electricity box. It was quite big, what they call a top to bottom. And I designed that with Vidler. We designed that together literally in his kitchen. And then, as a game, you know, found a means to get the cans, really, was the most difficult part. I'd go out, creep out in the middle of the night, you know, dressed up like a ninja. Completely blacked out, get out there, you know, pair of steps, ladders, whatever it took, really, and then do these spray jobs. Yeah. I remember one night we were spraying Clash of Styles, actually the wording Clash of Styles, which was a kind of risky area to spray, but we decided to go for it. And I had my headphones on, which was the old Walkman headphone. And so I had, for the first time I thought, oh, sod it, you know, I'll put my headphones on and do the spray job. So we're all together. And then I'm looking and doing the spray job. And then all of a sudden I look again and they're all gone. The only thing I can see coming towards me is this character, you know, coming out of the darkness towards me. Well, that was it, you know, I had to run. again. But the only means possible to escape was to climb over this fence wall. And of course, in doing so, I had gloves on, and I left them on the top of the barbed wire fence as I jumped over, you know. So there's loads of stories.
My name's Paul, I'm from Splot, and obviously I grew up with these guys here. We started getting into the hip hop scene and the graffiti scene in '83. So we started with the breakdancing, the graffiti art around that time, and we just continued with the graffiti. I did up until about the ages of 19, 20 years old, and then obviously went on to do other things. But these two guys have done stuff recently. We're talking about doing a couple of new graffiti pieces in the next couple of months. Like, you know, so, It was the movie Beat Street and documentary Star Wars, which came out in the early to mid 80s. Yeah, so that's what got me involved. Actually. I can remember we had the book Subway Art by Henry Chalfant. So yeah, we had that and the spray can art, which come after. So yeah, all those things. And we used to go to London a lot, buying trainers and clothes. So we used to see a lot of London graffiti as well. So yeah, so we took from that. Trial and error, as is anybody, you know. But back in the day, we had just cheap car paint, you know. So we were just using that at the time. It was, in the early days, it was like kind of your derelict walls. It wasn't on people's property. And also boards, big boards, we paint and do pieces on them like for me, I think there was like American writers like Scene and Scheme in the early 80s, but I was really taken with the Chrome Angels. I was really like them, and the more modern writers I like Dare, Doze, Nash, and who was the other guy? My mind's gone blank, but sort of those guys, yeah. Well, when we were in the 80s, there wasn't really many graffiti artists in Wales. It was like us and the guys from St Mellons, Hard Rock Concept. They were the main ones, and that's in the early mid 80s. So they were like doing anything, but I can't remember. I can remember the guys from St Mellons doing the Get Fresh. Do you remember that in '87? Yeah, so I remember going there watching that at the time. That was quite good. Seeing sort of Cardiff graffiti on TV. Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, everybody's excelled really and evolved like from when we were starting. Because I mean, you just have a look at some of the photographs and see the differences, and also the paint has got much better. You know what I mean? So it's the same with everything. Like early hip hop, I think it was just in this growth stage. It was growing. It was just like an amazing spirit, and just like the days where we used to sneak out of the house 2 o'clock in the morning and go split. It was such an event. There'd be loads of us with our flasks of coffee and this, and snacks and just go out, and it was just an adventure. Like I was just looking at the photograph of myself and this guy there, 12 years old, just standing, 12. I got a son who's like 12. I thought I'd never let him go out early hours in the morning spray painting. That's how it was back then. But it was such an adventure, and I think some of that gets lost over time. I think even with the rap music, I think it was a lot better back then. Just the spirit and the adventure of it all. It was great. Just because it was so new and different, and it was growing, and being part of that growth process was really good. Because it was so new. I mean, we're talking like when I was doing it, it was like the mid '80s. So it was just we were just learning and just. So I think for me, I just like the Chrome Angel style in the '80s. I was just so into the Chrome Angels. It was I just thought they were the best, and also the likes of Goldie from Wolverhampton, 3D in Bristol, who went on to do Massive Attack. It was just there's so many different artists, but for myself personally, I love the Chrome Angel style. Differences back then, because I think right at the moment, it's almost like every style has been done, every letter art, it's all kind of been done. But back then, everything was so new and different, and it was just so exciting. And I think that's what's sort of lost now. That just seeing so many things is new, where now it's more of a rehash of what's been done. It's very difficult to do anything different. I think now, for me, it's all about more ideas and themes, and really what you're saying in what you're writing. Because I think letters and colours and the different styles, it's kind of all been done. There's not much you can do this new and different other than the idea and the theme of a piece. We grew up in Splot, and there was a big superstore called Leo's, and it all burned down. So when it burned down, there was just tons of walls there, and but it was all kind of derelict. They were knocking it down anyway. One night we were spraying there early hours in the morning, but one of the houses, as we were spraying, one of the houses was being burgled, and in Splot the police station was only just down the road. So we heard the alarm just go off, and the police were just there in minutes. And we were like, oh no, John, because we were only young. I was 12 years old. Name guys the same age. We didn't know what to do, so we just hid under all the rubble in the. We'd all been brought on. We just had all these bricks and rubble all over us, with the police, with the dogs coming in, sniffing. And we just there. We must have been under the rubble for a good half hour, waiting for the police to go, but they didn't see us. But we had nowhere to run, see, because it was just. So we were just under all this. With all the police dogs sniffing around. But one time we sprayed in the park, Splot Park, and we didn't get caught spraying, but we got caught leaving the park, and the police, this is crazy, we were just leaving the park, and the police car came down, seeing us. He said, what's all the paint, what's all the cans? And took us, put us in the cells in the police station, and asked for our parents' numbers, because I said we were only, I must have been about 13 at the time. We called for my parents. I can remember my mother coming up and just giving me, slapped me across the face. What are you doing? And the police were just laughing, but I just think they wanted to scare us really, but they locked us up for a few hours. We used to wear these sort of big coats and just have the cans in there, but but we used to go out early in the morning, so we used to take sometimes sports sports bags and things like that rather than carrier bags because it kind of looks suspicious. So yeah, or rucksacks and things like that. So yeah, one time we done one in the train station in town. That was an adventure. 'Cause I thought we were going to get caught. Then so many stories, but off the top of my head, it's just trying to think of them. But they're just a couple I can remember anyway. But
Writing my name in graffiti on the wall. I'm writing my name in graffiti on the wall. I'm writing my name in graffiti on the wall. I'm writing my name in graffiti. All graffiti artists hold tight. In graffiti on the wall. I'm writing my name. All graffiti artists hold tight. I got 25 cans in my knapsack, crossing out the wigwam.
So he's probably told you the whole history of everything we've ever done. Well, my name's John. I was in a graffiti crew, Clash of Style. Would have been from early, I don't know, maybe 84, 85, up until about 88, and then it went into kind of another graffiti crew. But we did one piece, a Clash of Style piece. That was obviously the name of the crew. There was in Dumfries Place, it's now all car parks. It was behind there, so a lot of people saw it because it was not far from the Queen Street station. So a lot of people would see it coming from, around and about Cardiff and the outlying areas. So yeah, that was a piece that Ron wanted me to say a bit about. It was done over 2 nights, as far as I remember. In Clash of Style was me, Malcolm, Murphy and Martin Walsh, and we had a couple of other people, Paul, who we've spoken to earlier, and Herbie. They used to paint as well, but they would do their own thing together. And when we were painting, they would look out for us, and when they were painting, we'd look out for them. So most of the time we'd be sneaking out. I'd tell my parents, or I was staying around a friend's house or whatever, and we'd sneak out then about 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was. I think I was probably only about 14. I don't know, I dread to think if my kids were doing anything like it now, but we did back then, as most of them did. So I think it would have been on it would have been in school on the Monday, so it wouldn't have been on a Sunday night. It must have been on a Friday night. No, we did it over 2 nights. Must have been on a Friday night going into Saturday morning, and a Saturday morning going into Sunday morning, because it was reasonably big, I suppose, for back then. I just remember we stayed down Malcolm's Nan's that was quite near to town, and then I just got the memories of people then silently tapping on the window at 2 in the morning. We'd come out and then make our way into town. I don't know, we never stopped if there was police around now, but it was probably a lot quieter then. Everywhere would have been kicking out, I suppose, before then. Yeah, and it's difficult to explain now because people would not even know the area. It's just a car park. There was like a grass embankment, and it used to just all be bus stops along Dumfries Place, where the car park is now, like a grass embankment. And just before you get to the bridge as you're going into town, it was like some sort of Skittles club or something like that, or social club. And that's where we sort of did it, and it was just behind the train lines. I remember the one night we were chased, somebody just come, I don't know whether it was just a drunk coming back from somewhere, or whether it was someone who worked in the place, but it was about 4 in the morning. Malcolm didn't notice because he had headphones on, so we all ran. I was calling Malcolm didn't hear, but then we had to run, and there was, like a fence. We had to jump over the fence, over the train tracks, over the other fence, and back into town running. We were always having chases and stuff. So that was, I think, probably the first night, and stupidly we went back the second night to finish it, but I don't think we had any grief then. And that was about it, the story of that one. But yeah, done over 2 nights with all the old rubbish car paint that we would just get from, I don't know, either dodgy means or normal means, but I think we used to go to Bessemer Road Market. There was a guy there that sold all the old car paints. We used to get cheap, and that was about it really. And yeah, it's not the the most bright compared to the ones you see now. It's all dirgy and everything, but and part of the wall, I suppose, the way the wall was. But yeah, I suppose because it was in a prominent place, quite a lot of people saw it back then. No, it would have just been straight on the wall, stupidly. I think if we were painting it back then, if it was somewhere out of the way, we probably did. Not that I can remember, but we probably did. But somewhere like that, I think if we'd have painted it, you would have had to go back the next night and waited it really for it to dry or whatever. And I think people might have got an idea something's going to happen. Or if we did it on the same night, I don't think we'd want to be hanging around for an hour or so till it dried. So no, as I remember, we'd just gone straight in and done it with whatever rubbish paint we had on the wall. Yeah, so that was about it. I did the outline on the Clash. Martin did the outline on the Of. Malcolm did the outline on the Style. And then we would all just share the filling in. And, we'd normally have a rough idea of what we were doing. We used to have pencils and, try and do a rough design beforehand. You wouldn't copy the colours to a T, but we'd maybe have a rough idea of, what we were doing. But yeah, we used to share it if we were doing a crew piece. I was saying earlier that we were, even when we went on to be what became TNR then, the Network Rebels, we never really used to write our individual names. If you look at any of the pieces that we've done, they were either perhaps a crew name or a word that we would think of that we thought sounded cool, that we could do a good character with, or something that might have a theme. We were not really about, right, we just want to blast tags everywhere, we want our name up everywhere. I know that's kind of one of the main aspects of graffiti, but for us, we just wanted to just get a really hard street-looking piece, and it would just be, because we were sharing it, we'd all be sharing the filling in or whatever. We would just pick a word, and whoever come up with the best outline would do the outline, and somebody would do the background, someone would do a character or the fill-in. So it was never really about doing our individual names as such. And that was the thing with Clash of Style. We did a couple not long after that. We did one in the Capitol Centre where they pulled it out. I don't know how many people would remember. It used to be a cinema. I can't remember, it might be the Capitol Cinema. It was a cinema and a few other things there. This is going back mid-80s. And they pulled it down. And I remember we did another Clash of Style one in there, although we didn't get to finish the fill-in for that because that was smack bang in the middle of town. And I can remember there was people walking through, coming out back from clubs and police going by and God knows what. So we only ever got an outline done of that. I've got a photo somewhere. I thought it was here, but I can't see it. But yeah, that was what we used to do really. If we had the space and the time, do a crew name or a word. But yeah, it was all shared between a picture of the piece. Yeah, we'd always go back and try and take pictures. But it's so often the case, they just get lost in the sands of time. Most of our mid to later ones of the late 80s, they all went. We lent them to somebody who said, oh, can I have a look? I want to show my friend. Never got them back. They were confiscated, lost in house moves, this and the other. So it is cool to see some of the old photos, of either pieces we've done or other people have done, because it's just like a time capsule, I suppose, and some good memories, and seeing other pieces that I remember seeing from back then, the people did, is good to see. So we'd always try and get photos, but unfortunately I think there's perhaps not as many of them left. We all talk about, remember this piece, remember that piece. No one's ever got a photo, you just got it in your mind's eye and there we are. But yeah, it's good to see them. And we did always try and get photos, but like I say, a lot of the time they get lost. We would paint wherever we could, really. As far as the aesthetics of it go, I do like graffiti then when you see it on, I don't know, sort of old buildings or things like you say where a wall might have been pulled down. It's that urban look for us. I mean, I suppose in New York their thing when it was starting, I think it was all on trains. For us over here, although people did paint on trains, it was mostly on old abandoned buildings and things like that. And a lot of our pieces we've got photos still remaining of in Splot there was a Leo's. I don't know whether you'd ever remember Leo's supermarket, and that got knocked down, and it was just left there abandoned because it was being developed into houses for ours years to come. So it was just left derelict or pulled down for ages, and we used to paint there at least over a couple of summers, and nobody would ever say anything because nobody ever really went in there. No reason to go in there, but you know, it was like a graffiti playground really, you know, and that always looked good. I've got some old photos where, you know, you've got the bricks and the rubble and then a piece there. It just looks, I don't know, I suppose the epitome of sort of urban street graffiti of that era, I suppose, the urban decay and whatnot. So it looks cool, but yeah, so we did used to paint like that, but we would paint wherever we could, you know, as people still do now on hoardings, and except back then you just did have the risk of it was all illegal really. You didn't have anyone, now and again you might have someone say, oh, can you paint my wall? But most of the time, yeah, it was sneaking out in the night and painting wherever you could, taking the risk. That was part of the fun, which I suppose is all gone nowadays. It's all become, you know, a legitimate art form, I suppose. Back then, people say you're vandals, you're wrecking the place, or, you know, it was all illegal. But I suppose times change, maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. I don't know. Certainly, I can't see it being as much fun nowadays as it was back then, but less risk, I suppose. It's like most people, I think I probably would have been seeing it on videos and things. I can't remember really as far as a timeline, but maybe like Buffalo Girls, Malcolm McLaren, that type of thing, you know, and we were into the breakdancing, so it was, you know, like a natural thing. They all come hand in hand. So you would see it on different videos in magazines. I used to, you know, we'd buy the Street Sounds and Electro albums. There was stuff on those, all that type of stuff really. So it was all part of the early hip hop scene, I suppose. It influenced you, and then I guess a little bit later on, then it sort of blew up, became more serious when, you know, obviously the Style Wars documentary was on TV. The Subway Art Book and so on, and then from there you had something you could watch, and you know, if we managed to record you at the time, rewind and pause in, and then obviously learning from the Subway Art Book and, you know, trying to get a bit better from that. So they would have been the early sort of influences, I suppose. I know I had sketchbooks and everything, yeah. I think the first couple, we'd always do designs. The first couple, you know, that I did even before I was in Clash of Style, you know, they were terrible, but, you know, you would still have a rough idea of a design. But yeah, we would always have sketchbooks. I'd never just make it up. Apart from perhaps we would sort of ad-lib colours and so on sometimes. But we'd always have a rough idea, and we'd have sketchbooks, and yeah, it was an important part starting off, because that's how you would progress. You would look at something you might have done a couple of weeks ago and then think, oh, I can improve on that, it's not as good. And you could see the progression through perhaps your sketchbooks then of maybe outlines or characters or whatever. So yeah, it was something that, yeah, it did take a lot of practice, I suppose. And it seems like, you know, it was going on forever. It was probably only a few years really initially, but the progression was quite a lot, because you would be, that's all we did really, breakdance and just practice sketching in the books. You're only kids, so you didn't have any worries really apart from school. You could spend all the time you wanted. Yeah, just trying to progress your sort of outlines and whatnot, and you know, as you got a bit better, it spurred you on to try and do a bit more then. So yeah, there's probably loads. I'm trying to think now. There was always loads of chases and things like that. I'm trying to think now. Paul may have told you some of them. Malcolm might remember some. There was loads of funny things that was happening. I can't really think off the top of my head, but it mostly just stupid chases or whatever, when people would just see you come after you and whatnot, hide. Oh, I remember I did one stupidly. It was in the summer. It was under a bridge in Splot. This was with Paul. Clash of Style had sort of finished then, because Malcolm had moved away, and we sort of became another crew then, TNR. And I was just doing one with Paul, but it was in a summer's night. I think we got a bit too cocky or whatever, and we just started doing just a kind of a throw-up thing under a bridge. And I remember the police came then and we ran. And we had to run up, there was all people in the park and so on, we had to run up an embankment of Splot Park up onto like where the sort of lines were. And we can remember the police coming, and the only place we could go then, it was just a load of stinging nettles and things like that. And we just had to jump into them. And I can just remember sat in there with Paul. I don't know, there was police coming by, we could hear them talking when they come along the embankments. I don't think they had a dog. I'm probably just making that more. But it was definitely a couple of police we could hear. And I just remember them, we were just thinking we can't get caught. And we were just sat in like those bramble bushes and everything for probably about 2 hours till we were sure they were gone. But there was loads of stuff like that, just chases that everyone had back then because you weren't supposed to be doing it, obviously. So, yeah, that was that. It was just loads. Malcolm, who you might speak to in a moment, he became a sign writer through his graffiti, and now is again through kind of getting caught. We did a big piece over Splot Park again, but on Splot Baths, the swimming pool. We did one on the back of there, then the police had saw that. Obviously, somebody complained about it, they weren't happy. They must have figured then that it would have been local kids. They went to the local school. We went to a different school to Malcolm. They went to his school, local school. Must have went to the art department. And I think the police then were asking the art teacher. I think the art teacher, just said, I think Malcolm likes doing that sort of thing. And they had a look then. He had his tag on his school book. And they caught him bang to rights then. So they made him clean it off. But we couldn't let him do it on his own. They would never know who we were, the rest of us, because we were in different schools. But that's how they got Malcolm. So we helped him clean it off. I remember the one summer there we were cleaning off all the graffiti with this anti-graffiti stuff they gave us. It didn't really work, it was rubbish. Anyway, we were doing it just so he didn't have to do it on his own. But from there then, his art teacher introduced him to some sign writing guy, and then he went on to be a traditional sign writer then, Malcolm, at least in the early part of his working career. But yeah, there was lots of things like that where we were chases and getting caught. And,
In this graph world, colors express moves, finesse tools, best from a sketch, technique to bend the rules. As a teen, fiend for dreams and culture. Age 12, Jersey had to learn from my sofa. Watch Star Wars on my screen, it was over. Didn't bother dream till I was a little older. Only in my books, Pop saw through it all. What you trying to do? Get arrested for a war?